Hi, everyone. I'm here with Dr. Nario. Thanks for being here, Doc.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure.
All right, so we're going to talk about head injuries and have maybe I played football. I played 9 years of football, through being my younger years through college. And I got hit in the head a lot. I used my head as a weapon a lot. But, people hit their head just accidentally, and I think we're going to get into a little bit of how can that affect you when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s. So maybe something, a little bit of head trauma from when you were 18, maybe you were in a car accident. Um, you're playing a sport, soccer, the soccer ball hits you in the head. About how that affects you and how we can protect our brain. So, Dr. Nario is at Biointegrative Health Center in Reno, Nevada. You can check them out online and see all the things, the treatments that they do. If you're interested in our weight loss program, use the QR code on the screen or the link in the description. And if you're interested in interviews with doctors, nutritionists, and personal trainers about getting fit, staying healthy, getting healthy, subscribe to the channel. All right. So, um, right out of the gate, what do you have to say about head injuries? I mean, a lot of people have had head injuries that affect them, but you don't realize it, right?
Right. That's right. So, Steve, brain injuries are pretty common in sports, especially for our athletes. And people think and define brain injury usually as they relate this. They're picturing a football player or a boxer, MMA fighter. So that is true. Those are what we call high contact sports injury. So that actually, again, damages the brain because it's just a force that is not being able to handle by the brain structure. And this is where we definitely have of course, our football stars, our pro wrestlers now suffering Alzheimer's, like Muhammad Ali, because they got a beating in that head. But what I want to kind of point out today, even the smallest bump on your head, falling off a treadmill, hitting your head, and a gym equipment, even sudden jolt of a car accident can cause subtle brain trauma. And the thing here is these are what we call mild traumatic brain injuries. And it doesn't sound harmful, but again, without being knocked out, without passing out, the brain can experience inflammation, disrupt blood flow, and chemical changes can occur. And it's why it's so important to take care of your brain, just like as we're taking care of our muscles when we work out. So again, trauma to the brain isn't about how hard the hit was, it's about how your brain reacts after.
Yeah, and some of these things are subtle, like you got hit in the head with a soccer ball when
Right.
you're 7. That can affect you when you're 60, right?
That can be so. Again, the delayed reactions because of it doesn't have to be an immediate manifestation of symptoms. Sometimes it's how the body even takes multiple blows on the head in terms of how much tolerance can you take. So really, what I want to kind of point out to this topic of discussion is what are the chances, what are the factors that can actually increase brain damage in a traumatic brain injury incident. One is age. So the younger you are, maybe in the teens, in the children level, you're more susceptible because the brain is still in development. Older adults, like the elderly, so we have a lot of gym goers there who are seniors because of the frail blood vessels in the brain, the frail tissues, and because of the low volume, meaning the cushion is not there. Thus, there is less recovery. And histories of previous TBI or concussions, as you said, you yourself, you had your own route or dealings with concussions during your football years. But this is now, if you think about professional athletes, boxers, MMAs, repeated blows to the head, definitely that's going to be a repeated insult over and over again. And one thing that I always want to mention when people work out, neck strength and muscular stability. So poor neck strength allows the movement of the head more during an impact. So I like these exercises that I see that they kind of wrap something on their head with weights and they flex and extend their neck. So that's something that definitely will protect you a little bit more. And then also brain health. If you have other comorbidities that promotes inflammation, poor circulation, such as diabetes, even high cholesterol, high blood pressure, sleep deprivation, and even nutrient deficiencies. All of those are protectors for the brain from oxidative stress, especially after an injury. Hormones, if your hormones are not balanced, definitely this is something that's going to be an issue. Testosterone, growth hormones are anti inflammatory for the brain. And female athletes who are actually going through their menstrual period has a more proneness because when their estrogens and progesterones are low, that is actually brain protectors that is not there to protect the brain. Genetics, if you have predisposition for Alzheimer's like ApoE4, you have definitely more of a fragile brain than anybody else. And of course, the type of trauma. Is it rotational, like a whiplash, or again, direct trauma, like in football, like putting your helmet with your head straight up to your opponent? And more importantly, lifestyle. Poor sleep, hydration, stress, and nutrition makes that brain not ready for injury, so thus more susceptible to damage and harm.
Look, everybody bumps their head throughout their life here and there. It's not like, boxers or MMA fighters. Even the winners get hit in the head
Oh yeah,
a
for
lot.
sure.
You
Yep,
know,
that is
you
true.
win the fight. Okay. How many times did you get hit in the head? And you're the winner. You're not the one laying on the ground.
And that
Um,
makes you right think about the lifespan or the careers of these professional athletes. When people think, "Oh man, I would love to live that life of being the football player," think twice, because that's not really. I mean, you pay big money for an exchange, right?
yeah, I only played college football, but I can tell you, anyone that plays in the NFL, they deserve every penny they earn.
Of course,
It's a
definitely.
brutal sport, not just on your head, but on every part of your body. The average person can't imagine the impact of these collisions
Mhm.
just in college. The NFL is like, if you were standing on the sideline, it'd blow your mind. Uh,
Right, right. I
so,
agree.
anyway, not to get sidetracked, but what can we do? How about supplements? Like, how about creatine? Or what kind of supplements will help with this?
Okay, so there are two approaches in terms of brain injury. I guess integrative approaches to make it more specific in that sense. One is actually preventative um, protocols, and one is actually early intervention or therapeutic protocols. So when we're talking about brain health, when you want brain resilience or you want to prevent injury or actually maintain that integrity of your brain, one of the better supplements is omega fish oil. Again, anti-inflammatory, membrane support, right? Our brains are made of fatty consistencies. Magnesium threonate, cognitive support, neuroplasticity. So this is the type of magnesium that's better for the brain compared to glycinate,
Threonate.
oxide, threonate, right? THRE. And then curcumin, so inflammation modulation. If this, of course, brain injury does occur or it has not occurred yet. Vitamin D3, especially, that's going to be actually one of the good ones because it balances brain and immune health. And CoQ10, which is the one that actually is about mitochondrial resistance. So there's a lot of mitochondria in your brain cells. And then probiotics. Why is that relevant? Because that's in the gut. We're not talking about the gut, we're talking about the brain. It's gut brain axis connection. So every time you get a TBI, the first thing that sheds off will be gut lining. So meaning a leaky gut occurs immediately. And then another one important would be B complex, especially with methylation support. So the brain chemistry runs on these methylation reactions in our system, so that when we do these supplements, the reactions are still supported, especially in this intensified anticipation of a brain damage. So that's the early. I mean, you have to make sure you have all of those for maintenance of just simple brain function. But when you get to actual injury or after immediate injury, like 24, 48 hours or early intervention, you need to double up on the doses of these same specific supplements that I just mentioned. So, other things that you could add in there would be red light therapy. And I think we spoke about that last week. So, the one that you really like is like more of the mid mid or far, I mean, mid or near infrared lights. And then also, you also have some photobiomodulation or again, light therapy for the eyes to be stimulated, like blue lights, red lights. Those are also kind of making sure that the mind and the neurons are working back and forth. So it's neurofeedback, basically. And what I like, natural intervention is meditation for recovery. So that also calms your brain, stimulates the vagus nerve, and puts you in a parasympathetic state.
So, do you think that your brain can fully recover from, say, a concussion, or does it linger a little for the rest of your life?
Right. So the rule there, Steve, is it's actually time is of the essence. You don't want to play around with brain cells because it's harder to repair these brain cells. When it gets damaged, man, you're just like you're kind of playing catch up here. So the earlier, even let's say, let me just give you an example. If you played football like today and you got hit, even though you didn't get a concussion, go grab these supplements and then you just double up for at least 24 to 48 hours. So that's why it's really the subjective. Some people just shakes it off and says that, oh, I'm a tough one. But you're tough now. Are you going to be tough like in 2, 3, 4 years after these cells start to deteriorate? So what I say is if you think you got injured, just go grab these supplements. Or even let's say we're always on the preventative side, make sure you're always on these supplements already, just in general, just for general health, not just for the brain. All of these supplements that I just mentioned are always helpful for any system or organ in your body.
So, are you saying that a collision or impact to the brain can noticeably affect you years later, where you didn't notice maybe at first, but years later, now
Right.
it's like the cells are now damaged, or were they damaged from the beginning? And
Right.
now
So,
you're just noticing.
right. So, you know those cartoons where you light a dynamite and then there's a, what do you call that? That little thread that when you light it up.
Yeah, yeah. Like
So, right.
Roadrunner and
So,
Coyote. Yeah, okay.
when you start lighting it up, that tip of that thread is sparkling up, right? And you're like, there's no explosion yet, right? So it's still lighting up, and then once it gets to the actual dynamite, that's usually the late phase. So let me help
Okay.
our patients here how to recognize these subtle symptoms. So early TBI usually observed weeks to months after the injury. Watch out for memory problems, brain fog, difficulty concentration, and then also slower processing of words and even memory. So difficult to multitask, and physically you will feel headaches, dizziness, fatigue. So mood is also affected. Like you're irritated, anxious. Even heart rate variability is not good after an injury. So this is hard because most of our young people who gets injured are just like, I'll shrug this off. I'm okay. But if you're really conscious about your system, you're going to recognize this immediately because this is not your baseline. You're a healthy person. It's different when you have other conditions ongoing. And if you're older or in the senior years, some other conditions might be masking this also. But as you get farther and farther, maybe months or years, now massive affectation will now be present. For example, cognition. This is really like it's hard to execute functions now. Now you have depression, anxiety, PTSD, and chronic migraines, chronic headaches, and worst, hormonal disruption because that brain is the one controlling your sex hormones, especially like cortisol and also cortisol. And even ACTH is related to the release in that brain area. And then sleep, insomnia is now going to be part of that. So as you can see, it becomes bigger and bigger of a problem. That's why catch it in the early stages so that you don't have to deal with them as you move forward.
That's a really good analogy with the dynamite. That visual really helps to kind of explain how the progression of this can occur.
Right.
So people with Alzheimer's or beginning stages of that, Alzheimer's or dementia, um, do you, is there other causes for that other than just bonking your head?
The Alzheimer's or dementia?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably other causes, right?
Right. So there are, and again, that's probably out of our topic, but let me just put some prominent ones. So, of course, cardiovascular system. That's one of the things. If you have high cholesterol or high blood pressure, the blood flow to your brain is definitely not going to be there. And then also genetics. I mentioned ApoE4. If you have a gene that was passed on to you by family, and you now have this accelerated genes of forming plaques in your brain, even mold infection like Lyme, if it gets to your brain, that will definitely accelerate dementia. So that's why, as I say, this is so difficult when you get to that point, when you get to the older age group and you're dealing with brain issues, that you're trying to rule out if it's TBI or is it are there other things also occurring. That's why early stage, catch it, get that thread from that dynamite, put your finger on it and stop that light from going to the dynamite. That's the bigger, that's why we advocate for preventative medicine all throughout, regardless of whatever topic we're talking about.
Okay, so last question for me. Let me reverse that question. Can a concussion or two when you're younger, can that cause, I mean, I think I know the answer to that. That could cause dementia or Alzheimer's or problems with your brain 40 years later, right?
That's right. So
So that also could be the cause. It could be a bonk on the head
Mhm.
where you weren't going to get this problem, but because of the head trauma, you have this problem later, right?
Right. So a good example for you would be patients of mine that I see who are in their like 40s or 50s. So there's nothing significant about their history until they see me for low hormones. So low testosterone, low pregnenolone, low DHEA. And at this age, at 40, 50, you're not supposed to have these issues yet. I mean, sure, slight, but when you see them so low, one of the things that you think about, of course, is stress. But when you dig a little deeper, you find out that there was a history of TBI. And as I told you, where these hormones, the main control panel is in the brain. So when you look at that, and now you lead into the history. Oh yes, I have headaches too. And you get a scan, you would see specific areas of damage there. And now you really have to now focus on really replacing these hormones sometimes, because sometimes it's too late, just because again time is of the essence when we're talking about the brain.
Okay, so Doc, do you have any last advice or tips or pointers on this topic for our listeners?
Yeah, so as I always say, do not belittle head injuries. So may it be the strongest hit on your head, may it be the lightest slap on your face, those are actual damages that can still have long-term effects on you. And that's why be sensitive with your body. Even the slightest, I'm not forgetting stuff before. I'm not moody like this. And especially after that specific incident, you have to pack it up with all these supplements I just mentioned to you. And also, again, I don't like going to that place. I always want to have a brain that's ready for injury, especially if I anticipate that, hey, I'm an athlete. I have to make sure as early as now that I'm not yet involved with it. I'm going to be making it stronger with all these supplements. And also, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make that brain work hard. You're going to, meaning you're going to analyze stuff. You're going to look at crossword puzzles. Always keep that brain working, not only because you're in anticipation of the damage, but in the future, as we spoke about Alzheimer's, dementia. Oh, by the before we leave, let me just give you the doses here so that our viewers can have some guidance. Omega 3s, 1,000 milligrams per day, magnesium threonate, 1,000 milligrams daily, curcumin,
Wow,
500
that's a healthy
milligrams.
dose.
Yeah, that's magnesium. Magnesium threonate has to be higher compared to glycinate or oxide because it's always going to be focused on brain. It's not going to affect your constipation issues, your muscular. I mean, it will, but not like threonate is just going to go through the brain. That's where the favorite place where they work. Vitamin D, 2,000 international units. CoQ10, 100 milligrams per day. Probiotics, 5 to 10 billion. And then B complex once a day. And acute injuries, double the dose. And then you definitely be guided by your clinicians with this, because there's a time that you can only take so much and you need to taper off from those double doses.
And what's the best type of B complex? There's one that's better than the others.
So anything that has methylated ingredients to it. So not like your regular folic acid, not your cyanocobalamin, but methylcobalamin and methylfolate. So those are examples that they are methylated versions of vitamin Bs.
Great. Okay. Great advice. Dr. Nario, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, Steve, thank you again for having me as always. And as you all know, that knowledge is power. And thank you for letting us provide you with the our tips in health and longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge.